Michelle Dortnack from Unnata Aerial Yoga. Today, let's take a look at cow-cat. Cow-cat. Cow pose is traditionally done on an inhale, cat pose on an exhale. And when you match them side by side and then repeat them for several cycles, they become a warm-up. So I'm going to show you what it is on the floor, how to use the hammock in 2 different ways for this warm-up, and then we'll compare and contrast so you can see maybe why you would want to use the hammock in the first place. Let's get to it. So I'm going to come onto the hands and knees for the floor version without the hammock. Cow pose, I look up or I look forward, whatever my spine allows me to do, my spine and my neck. And I point my tailbone towards the ceiling if I can. And it's a curvature for the spine in a way where you stretch the front surface of the torso. That's the inhale. Then when I'm ready to exhale, I go the other way. I tuck the chin, I tuck the tail, I flatten the abdomen into the spine. So in a way, I'm trying to tuck my navel. Then I go back and forth between the two. Now what makes this a warm-up is not only the fact that you're undulating through the spine, so you're sort of warming up your muscles, you're getting your fluids to move around, you're getting some movement in the hip joints, so you're warming up your joints, but you're also training your mind to focus on the breath because you're making your body move in time with the breath, which is naturally slow-ish compared to the movements of the mind. And especially as you try to breathe a little bit deeper, you'll get a little more flexible. You'll be able to bend a little bit more each time you go into the different positions, and that takes even more time. So there it is. That's your warm-up for body and for mind. Now, let's take a look at the first way that we're going to use the hammock. The first way is going to look pretty similar, but I'm going to put a foot inside. So I'm going to just sort of open it up, make sure it's open, take a leg in. For me, I'm putting my right foot in first. And then I'm going to line myself up so that my hips are underneath the plumb line. And then, of course, everything matches up where it needs to be similar to the version on the floor. Now, I do have to be active in the right foot, ankle, to not lose the hammock so my leg doesn't just drop out of it. But the rest of my leg, I'm trying to let it be as relaxed as I can. And ideally, your thigh bone is hanging parallel to the floor. Now, of course, there's a range of acceptable here, but if the knee is too far away from the ground, it's going to be really challenging on your lower back, and so you might not enjoy it as a warm-up. And if the knee is too close to the floor, it just won't feel like you're getting much out of it, and so once again, you might not enjoy it as a warm-up. So keep that in mind. From here, we go into our cow and cat the same way we did when we didn't use the hammock. So I'll inhale, take a look up, and I try to, or forward, but I'm trying to look up. And the tailbone is trying to raise towards the ceiling to curve the back. Now, the variation you can do here, however, you can sort of sit back if you'd like. That is something you can do if you feel like you need to get a little more out of it, or if your wrists don't necessarily enjoy being in that position for very long. Then as they go into the cat pose, so as you exhale, you're going to want to bring your shoulders back over the wrists for this, and tuck your chin. You try to tuck your tail, and you try to flatten the belly into the spine. Here's where it's different. Because the foot is in the hammock, there's resistance there. So I won't be able to go to my full flexibility in terms of how much the pelvis can tilt, so it won't be stretching my back in the same way. However, it's giving me a stretch for my right quadricep, and it's encouraging me to use my abdominal muscles a bit more. So that creates a little bit more heat. And, as a warm-up, that's usually a good thing. And, of course, we'll go back and forth. So I inhale, go into whatever my version of cow is here. Exhale, whatever my version of cat pose is here. You just want to make sure that you don't, in the cat pose, try too hard to tilt the pelvis where you hurt your knee. Make sure you're getting a stretch. You feel it in the quadricep muscle, but not necessarily in the knee. So you might have to just be wary of that. Now, you would do, of course, the other leg, but because, in this video, and I'm just demonstrating, I'll spare you, basically. We'll save some time. Let's take a look at the second way that we can use the hammock. And for that, I'm going to actually stand up so that I can come to sit in the hammock. Sit in the hammock. Now the hammock is pretty spread out because I want it to, of course, not only contain my buttocks, but I may need to spread it down the thighs a little bit, and I don't want to spill out the backside. Now, at the same time here that I'm sitting, I'm going to take the arms out the back and then around the sides. I'm going to, from here, try to lean forward. I'm taking my shoulders through the center, and I want to lean over so much that I get my spine as parallel to the floor as possible. Now, as you can imagine, the more I go there, I'm spilling out of the hammock, so I have to use these elbows hooked on the back edges of the hammock to prevent me from falling out all the way. You want to try and keep sort of pushing the hands or the elbows sort of forward in space enough that it keeps the hammock glued against my body and keeps me suspended. If you aren't able to go very far forward, you may need to slide the edge back a little bit, so not right in the back of the knee, but maybe closer to the buttocks. If you're not getting enough support, perhaps you need to slide the hammock closer to your knees if it's not covering all the way. All right, so let me go back there. And because I'm using my elbows, right, my elbow crease there to support my weight, I don't really need to use the hands holding onto anything, so I'm going to come into a yoga mudra. Let's do the traditional one. Well, you can make your choice, of course. You can do whichever one you want. But this is a good one for focus, so it's a nice one to start out with. Bringing the thumb and the first finger together, Jnana Mudra. Now, I'm also going to squeeze my feet in. This part is not necessarily so important, but it just helps you, by being engaged, keep warming things up. So I'm squeezing my feet in towards the buttocks. Then I'm going to do this spinal undulation. So as I inhale, I curve the spine to try and look up, try to point the tail towards the ceiling. That's my cow pose. And on the exhale, I curve the spine the other way, tuck the tail, try to draw the navel in, tuck the chin in. That's the exhale, that's cat pose. Inhale, cow, and exhale, cat. Now, because I'm inside the hammock and because I have to use quite a bit of strength here to not fall out, then I'm building a little bit more heat than I would be if I was doing the fuller version without the hammock. Building a little more heat. So as a warm-up, it's, literally warming you up. A little bit more effective that way. I'm still getting the undulation for the spine. And I'm still getting this sort of focus of the attention, paying attention to the breath and the movement of the breath. When I'm ready to release, sometimes it's easier to release if you tuck the tail and then use your hands to push, or your arms to push the fabric forward, or basically pull your body back in between the two sides so that you can release from this safely. Well, so those are two different ways to do the cow and cat. And I hope you found them helpful and useful in your practice. Once again, I'm Michelle Dortanek of Unnata Aerial Yoga.